Hello and welcome to the Replimat, a semi-regular chatcast in which two writers and nerds, allegedly, make their way through Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode by episode. On the one hand we have me, a newbie, Tim, and on the other hand we have...
Me, an old bee, Andy.
And this week we have a third bee, PJ.
Hello. I guess I'm the mid-B then, I guess.
Mid-B. Yeah.
Okay, yes. All right. And this week we are looking at Series 2, Episode 13, Armageddon Game. Written by Morgan Gendel, directed by Winrich Kolber. Broadcast January the 31st, 1994. And according to Netflix, Bashir and O'Brien travel to a lab orbiting Tolani 3 in an effort to eliminate the Harvesters, a deadly biomechanical weapon and nothing to do with a chain of restaurants and pubs and things.
Disappointing
So there we have
restaurants.
Yes. And here we are, all three of us. PJ for the first time. Welcome to the Replimat, PJ.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good. For any of our viewers and listeners, I've pluralised it this week. It's usually just the one viewer. But for any of our viewers and listeners, please, PJ, would you account for yourself and tell us exactly why the hell you're here and what your qualifications are?
Well, I've got a BSc in humanities, and so yeah, I'm BJ.
Oh, humanity, yes.
I am a writer and podcaster, and one of my two podcasts is a Star Trek podcast, The Measure of a Fan, in which we're watching all of Star Trek chronologically with my friend Matt Troy, who's a stand-up comedian and writer, and my brother Elliot Red, who has infamously already been on your show, so you know all about him.
Oh, yes.
But yeah, I've been a Star Trek fan since I was about 10, I think, 9 or 10.
Decades
so
ago, huh?
Long time. Yeah.
Oh, all right. So I am very much the newbie.
Again.
Yeah, whereas when Elliot was on the cast, he was he was like the uber newbie. But but no,
Newbie.
I'm very much the newbie then, because although I've been familiar with Star Trek for years, I've never really kind of got into it. So this is certainly for Deep Space Nine. This is all new to me. So
well, you've definitely started in a better place than Elliot did. So
I'm familiar enough to know that that's what you've put him through already is
it's been a long road.
Before we move on to Armageddon Game, PJ, assuming that you might have been here last week, how's your week since been?
Oh, it's been lovely, thank you. I went to work and I recorded an episode of my podcast, The Trouble with Edward. Short Trek's coming out soon. I don't know when this is coming out. So
this will be out YouTube Monday.
Our episode on the Cage will be out before that, and then it's The Trouble with Edward. But I've watched some Star Trek this week, and
I'm sorry.
I've raised my son, I guess, as well. That's
like
been my
week. These things are challenging. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
I have two.
Oh, I'm not doing that. One's enough.
That is all I need.
Cool. So, have you, apart from that, have you watched anything else or read anything that you would like to share with us and our viewer?
I have been reading the third book in Kim Newman's Anno Dracula series. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was really, really good.
Over there, it's over there. I do have the first. I got the first one. I started it a long time ago. Didn't get very into it. I don't know. I want to give it a go one day, but it just wasn't connecting for me.
I love
Pratchett, so
yeah, big Pratchett fan. I'm also reading The Science of Discworld 3 at the moment. But no, yeah, I love a good Dracula book, and I remember a few years ago I read the first Anno Dracula and Dracula the Undead, which was the official continuation by Bram Stoker's great grandnephew. It's
is
not
that
good.
is that Dacre Stoker?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought it was quite bad.
Oh, really? See, I've got all
Yeah.
3 of those because there's 3 of them now. I haven't read any of them yet.
I've got the one that's called Dracul.
I
J.D.
really liked
Barker.
Dracul. I thought Dracul was very good, and I read
Cool.
that before I read Dracula the Undead, and then Dracula
Right.
the Undead was awful. So
It's on the bookshelf. I got it was a Christmas present. I think
But
last
Tim
Christmas
has a
I
habit
haven't
of
got around
buying
to reading
books
it
and not
yet.
reading them, don't you, Tim?
Yeah, I do. Every week I come up with a book that I've just this is
I
the new
bought
book I've got. I
myself.
haven't read it yet. So
I bought this for decoration.
yeah.
yeah, then I was told I'd enjoy Anno Dracula, and I wanted to read a good Dracula book. And yeah, I quite like an alternate history, sort of that League of Extraordinary Gentlemen kind of merging of all the different stories, things as well. So yeah, I enjoy them.
Cool. Good stuff.
Cool.
Right, Andy,
Hello.
are you prepared now to account for yourself over this last week?
I can now account for myself.
Yeah.
I've been working all week too. It's funny. Remember I
Is it?
mentioned, well, not in a ha-ha way, more than that way, because that's funny. Well, turns out the code ain't so good for my knee either. And my God, it's freezing in that bloody depot at the moment, to the point where I've actually got my leg brace back on now.
Ooh.
And this. So you can't actually see it, but the viewers can, because they got more wider screen.
Right.
So yeah, that's fun. Beyond that, I've done, because people are really excited about my Cellblock H marathon that I'm doing. I've actually reached episode 200. So only 492 to go.
How long has that taken you?
Surprisingly, not that long.
Okay.
I can't
3
remember how
weeks.
long I started. It wasn't that long ago, because I tend to do like Monday to Friday when I go home from work an episode, so 5 a week. So my math's crap. So it's taken me that long.
Okay.
Just to do a Tim, I've made an acquisition this week of a book which I will read and not just stick on my shelf, which is
I will read my books at some point.
the second of the D.V. Bishop. Out of Césaire thingamajiggy, Florence crime set in 1537. The Darkest Sin. But I'm not going to read it just yet.
Okay.
Even though I've bought it because I just finished the other one literally the other day. But it did make me decide to go back to these books. C.J. Sampson, which is another historical crime series that's actually set almost the same time, like I think it's set like 3 years later, but in the UK, during Tudor England, which is quite fun. Beyond that, that's pretty much been my week, really. I've not really watched much else. But Tim, dare I even ask?
Well, it's the usual thing of working a lot and raising a family and stuff as well. But outside of that, I have managed to watch some more Clone Wars, which is good, and I'm still really enjoying Clone Wars, which is great. I'm almost at the end of season 1 now, and that's flown by actually. Considering I'll maybe get to watch an episode at breakfast time and maybe one at lunchtime if I'm working from home. We've finished watching Cracker now. I watched the very last episode of Cracker, which is the one that was done 10 years later. Jimmy McGovern was back writing it. It was much better again. Just really, really good stuff. So overall, a really great series that I'll look forward to revisiting at some point in the future again, I'm sure.
Nice.
Now, last week you tasked me with trying to watch Tusk.
Oh, good God, yes, I did. And I'd also said I was going to watch The Lair of the White Worm, didn't I?
Yes. I couldn't watch Tusk because I had to pay for it.
Huh. Oh, on Amazon, presumably.
Yeah. I couldn't find it anywhere else. So I haven't watched Tusk yet, but we did watch Lair of the White Worm.
Oh, me too. And that
which was just absolutely fucking awful. Oh God! I mean, I hadn't seen it for
hadn't seen it at all
30 plus
last week.
30 plus years. It was slightly notorious when we were towards the end of when we were at school, because there's a lot of like nudity and stuff in it. So that's why it kind of had this notoriety. And I do remember the main things I remember about it were Amanda Donohoe wandering around with like virtually nothing on. The further into the film you get, the less costume she's given to wear. It's just like a dock leaf and body paint. Well, yeah, really, yeah. And a very young Hugh Grant, who looked about 14. What I did notice was, like, certainly towards the end, you've got him and Hugh Grant sitting next to each other, and they're both there with their kind of like flossy, floppy
mid-parting, yeah.
I just thought this is a very kind of mid-90s look for the late 80s.
Yeah. Cool. Shall we do something really crazy and talk about the episode?
Why not? I'm just going to pour my coffee.
Okay, you take the plunge as you do. Or have you plunged already?
I've plunged already, yes.
You plunged already. Okay, that's good.
I plunged when nobody was looking.
Yes. Well, you say
it's better to plunge in secret.
You say that. It normally would start with Tim because he's a noob, but since Patrick is the guest, you may start the ball rolling and we all just jump in as and when. First question, actually, to lead the conversation with you, Patrick, because remember when I first asked you to come on, I asked you which episode you'd like to do, I think. Yes. You chose either this or...
Blood Oath.
That's the one. I think I have blood in it. Why this?
Because it's the coffee episode and that makes me laugh.
Okay, that's fair. And the Patreon viewers will, of course, totally see how that fits very well now. Cause
it's just so airplane. Miles never drinks coffee at home.
What? Yes, I do. Oh, shit.
Actually, I'm just thinking that the time code on that video is 15:33 or something. It's 15:20 here at the moment, and I'm just having a coffee. It's probably going to be my last one of the day, because if I have any more, it's going to keep me up at night.
I bet your missus doesn't even think you drink coffee during the day, does she?
I think she even thinks I drink nothing but coffee. But there we go.
My wife was trying to work out if I'd been kidnapped and she'd been sent a video of me dying because of radiation or something, what would tip her off? And I had to say, it's me eating an entire garlic baguette, probably. That's...
Ooh, interesting.
Only because garlic reacts badly with me.
Ah, fair.
So,
the vampires again.
Yeah, if a vampire reacted with bowel movements.
Maybe they do.
Well, yeah, it's the coffee thing that makes me laugh the most, because it is this thing where O'Brien apparently has set off this device that's killed everyone on the ship, except the ambassador, who got out just in time.
Naturally.
And yeah, they videoed it just to show Commander Sisko. He's not captain yet. Got to remember that. And
spoiler.
And yeah, so when they watch this video, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we'll now show it to O'Brien's wife, just so she can see how he died as well, because that's what every spouse wants."
I did think that odd. It's like, we do have a recording. It's like, yes, please, may I?
Well, I was going to take your word for it, but then you really pushed this video thing on us. So.
I'm glad at least we didn't watch her watching it, because I think that would have been a challenge too far.
Yeah. And then she runs in going, "He was drinking coffee. He doesn't drink coffee this late in the day." And Sisko and Dax are like, "Well, we better investigate then."
That's good enough for us.
When they first showed it, I thought there's got to be something in this that someone is going to pick up a detail. Either there'll be something in the background where, like, the whole thing about where a clock, the hands on a clock suddenly shift or something stupid like that they haven't picked up. So I was quite surprised that it all came down to the coffee, but
especially since I paid attention, and in the teaser he is drinking that coffee. You see him drinking it in the teaser, so straight off, if you're paying attention, you're like, "No, he was drinking it."
Yeah, he was.
I know she's right, but he was drinking it.
She was right, but wrong.
Yeah,
because she clearly doesn't pay any attention to Mars at all, which obviously is the not subtext, the theme of this entire story, that they just don't pay attention to each other at all, really.
Yeah, well.
But we'll get into their relationship a bit later, because that's a conversation we've had a few times on this podcast. We're not fans. Yeah.
So the coffee is just the thing that always stood out for me in this. I think the rest of it is it's a pretty solid episode. It's not one of my favourites, but it's pretty solid, and I like that it sort of starts to develop the O'Brien Bashir relationship.
I like that in this episode. Obviously, we knew they survived this absolute crap, but I love that. Obviously, the crew don't know, and so their reactions are all very real. And it was nice to get a bit of insight into who these characters are to each other a little bit. We've been seeing it bit by bit, so it's nice to see how they reacted to supposedly their death. And that felt quite real. And
I really like the scene with Dax and Kira in Quarks.
Oh, Tim loved that too. He laughed a lot.
That was the best bit of the episode for me. That whole scene, it was immaculately played. Perfectly pitched. Just everything about that scene was great. I wasn't massively keen on the episode as a whole. I will say, but I was particularly taken with that scene. So
I was waiting in that scene, or maybe a bit later, for Quark to reveal that this drink that he offered out for free turned out to be like he had a huge consignment because of some misorder that Ron made.
It was an odd episode. I'm not entirely taken with O'Brien as a character anyway. And Bashir kind of is a bit up and down. And as soon as he starts talking about women, I just it's uncomfortable. And it's I don't know whether it's the actor or the script, but there's he comes across as just really kind of creepy.
I still think it's a bit of both. I think it's clunky character work, but Sadiq is not. He's fine. He's still quite a young actor himself, and I think he's definitely finding himself. I mean, later down the line, he gets so good at this stuff, but at this point, you're like, he's still not quite sure how he's pitching it.
All this stuff about all this kind of comments on the concept of marriage in Starfleet. It is Starfleet, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. The
Earth Force.
I thought, I mean, just thinking, obviously this was made in 93, broadcast beginning in 94, first broadcast. Even for then, the whole that kind of discussion about sort of roles in a marriage seemed really outdated. Really outdated. I was like, this is nuts. Why, this is supposed to be set in some enlightened future, and it was like listening to something that, from the 1950s or something. So I kind of get where they wanted to go with that whole conversation, trying to point out that the O'Brien's marriage is not brilliant, and which I think potentially is actually something probably more of the producers thinking we need to try and cover this in some way because it's obvious on screen that there's not an awful lot of affection there. But the whole conversation I felt was just really, really clunky.
See, I wonder. You think it's sort of a bit archaic for its time and stuff, but obviously this was written going by the Star Trek companion thing, by two married men. So maybe it's not so much it's bit out of place for its time, so much as their perspective. Because they're obviously writing it from their perspective of marriage.
It's just one writer this week.
Yeah, but the producers, Ira Stevenberg, he had quite a bit of input. Remember, I mentioned that whole line about Bashir's ballerina girlfriend. That was literally Ira Stevenberg writing about his girlfriend because he wanted something. But yeah, I think maybe it's just the general problem of older Trek is that it is predominantly written by middle-aged white men. And they obviously have a very, certainly in the 90s. I mean, it's only 93, so it's still more of an 80s viewpoint, really, of marriage and just the gender roles. They get better.
I wonder if either of those men are still married to those women, though, or if they maybe weren't in particularly happy marriages.
That's possible. Yeah, I think PJ would be aware of this too. I've mentioned this to Tim before, that when DS9 first began, the producers were very, not vocal, but certainly in retrospect have been vocal of the fact that they got lumbered with the whole O'Brien marriage thing, and they never knew what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
They never knew. And it, as I said before, it definitely shows on screen. They really have no idea what to do with it. And they are looking for every excuse to just either forget it's there or just keep on pushing Keiko off to do something, visit
Takes
her
a lot of
100-year-old mother.
I don't think it does the series any favors, actually. I think by treating it the way they do, I think it actually, when we do see Mr. and Mrs. O'Brien together, it actually it adds to the clunkiness of it, because we don't see them very often. We don't see them interacting.
They're never happy with each other, are they? Really?
And just so the fact, because it's not normalised at any point, it just seems much more. It seems difficult. And it's always as if it's being put before us to show something in particular. So not necessarily gimmicky, but you're serving a particular purpose rather than just being part of the norm of their life on the station.
See, it's for me, having never been married. I mean, I've been with people in longish relationships. So it's interesting hearing your perspective on this, both of you, because obviously, I don't know, I never bought it anyway, just from writing point of view, nothing else. But I will say one thing, because you mentioned earlier, Tim, where they call her Mrs. O'Brien, not Keiko, which is interesting because it does raise a point like that clearly, because we've never seen her hang out with anybody other than O'Brien.
No, possibly with Cisco at the beginning when they were talking about setting up the school.
But even then, that was a work thing, wasn't it? You don't see her just socialising with anybody. And thinking ahead, and PJ will be able to back this up whether I'm making this up or not, I don't think we ever do really see her just socialising with the rest of the crew.
I can think of one occasion where she's at like a social, I think it's a
really?
Party when Waxana Troy visits the station?
Oh, yeah. The next time, of course. Yeah. She is at that. That's right, yeah.
That's the only time I can think of.
That's a funny old social, I tell you. I like that. I'm one of the few people who like that episode, but that's next year.
I still think it's odd that they do that because there's a limited number of Starfleet people on the station, isn't there? There's a limited number of humans as well. I just think it's odd that that the expectation is that she's referred to as Mrs. O'Brien. It's
odd because it does suggest that they've been there for a year and a half, give or take, and he's not invited to any staff dues.
No, and others haven't, popped around, just socially, out of hours for a quick rectogeno or whatever. It's just.
But even then, if you introduced either of you to introduce your wives to workmates, even if it's just a one-off, the odds are they're not going to call them Mrs. Whatever, are they?
No,
I would assume.
No, I bumped into a work colleague, Adam, last Sunday when we were in Curry's, for example, with the family. And so I said, Adam, This is my wife, Sean. It's not. Hello,
This is Mrs.
Gambrel.
It'd
Just
be even weirder if I did it because my wife didn't take my name. So
And you're just like, that's not even my name.
yeah.
yes, this isn't Mrs. Montgomery, which would then presumably raise even more questions.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, it's clunky, and it just yeah, I didn't like that. Again, it comes down to what feels natural. What feels like natural dialogue. We had some more of the sci-fi food stuff in this.
You love that, don't you?
As well. It was always great. always great, because there are other ways around it and stuff as well. It's just adding words.
Yeah, maybe it's just their clunky attempt of making the world of DS9 feel alive and multicultural and whatnot. Because again, this is, still quite a new thing for Star Trek to do, because up until now, both their shows are very much, we go to an alien planet, we're off. But this is them trying to build a world properly. So maybe it's just a terrible side effect of that.
The other sci-fi or the other Star Trek thing that got me in this episode as well was the stupid hair.
Oh!
Because the hair thing is automatically and automatically my attention was drawn to the hair because it looks daft, and because it looks daft, I end up looking at it more than I should, and it drags me out of what's going on because I'm constantly looking at the hair and thinking that just looks silly. Even more when the other guys came in and they had the funny bit that goes up the back here, and I find myself distracted by it, so that I'm there looking at it thinking, how did they get the hair like that, rather than paying attention to the bloody episode, which is, so it's, I can see they want to try and make these alien cultures different, but when they do it in a way that distracts the viewer, I think it's self-defeating. I don't think it helps either present the cultures that they're presenting, or it certainly doesn't help the narrative in any way at all. There are some with positive aspects to the narrative in this episode. But we'll come back. You want to talk about the hair, don't you? So we can come back to my positive aspects.
Yeah. No. Well, I have a question for both of you, actually. In this episode,
no, I don't wear a hairpiece. Go on.
Neither do I. Question for both of you. In this episode, right, we never discover why they were at war, do we?
No.
Well, here's the answer for you. In the Star Trek DS9 companion, they came up with this idea in the writer's room, and it actually is because of their stupid hairstyles.
Wow.
As far as they're concerned, that's the canon reason. And of course, apparently the writer's room had a very funny day that day when they decided that's the reason why. Because obviously they noticed the hair when presumably the costumers did it, and they're like, wow, okay, can't escape that, can we?
That's poor.
I mean, why else would you go to war?
I spent the whole episode trying to work out what their hair reminded me of, and then towards the end, my wife just shouted, "Who's from Whoville?"
Yes.
I was like, "Yep, that's the one. That's it."
Brilliant.
What I was going to say before was I did like the way that the resolution, as it were, of the war situation wasn't about one side trying to take advantage of a peace treaty situation and like come in at the last minute and and try and screw everything over. And actually, it was a ludicrous situation that they'd both agreed on. So they were both equally at fault in this, slightly nutsy resolution they'd come up with, which involved killing people that they had absolutely no right to kill in the first place.
You know about
Which
it.
is
That's enough.
insane. But I thought, well, okay, that's refreshingly kind of a refreshingly original take on that kind of situation. Because when they burst in and started firing on everyone, I thought, okay, yeah, here we go. This is one hairpiece deciding that they're gonna disrupt everything. So
It really was.
yeah, I did like that, but I don't know. The whole episode just didn't fire my imagination particularly, and didn't. Yeah, it wasn't hugely satisfying.
Patrick, generally, and you pretty much know this, that O'Brien is regarded very highly within Trek fandom these days. Lower Decks obviously really leaned into that. Where they literally create a statue of the most important person in Star Trek history, or Starfleet history, is O'Brien.
Yeah.
But that's another thing. What's your take on O'Brien? Because, as we know, Tim is not a fan, which is interesting because that's new.
I really like him. I don't think this is his best episode. I think the initial rocky beginnings of the relationship with Bashir, I think neither of them come across that well sometimes in how that starts. But obviously, because I started with him on Next Generation and then into Deep Space Nine, and I love how they grow his character on Next Generation to the point where he's a guest character who occasionally gets his own episodes on Next Generation, and then into Deep Space Nine, where I think they do some really interesting and poor O'Brien stuff as it's going on. But so I do really like O'Brien.
What do you guys think of the Bashir O'Brien relationship in this episode in particular? Because obviously Tim's only time they've really developed this in any way was in Storyteller last season, and just a few bits and pieces. Because obviously Bashir just generally
there was that bit in Rivals, wasn't there, recently, where they were trying to play squash.
Oh yes,
and yeah,
what an episode. Oh.
But both the episodes so far where they've been sent away on a mission together, I don't understand either of them, because it should, if it's not obvious to other members of the crew that they don't massively get on, then something's going wrong somewhere, and it's a sort of situation where you think you'd send someone else with them because you need a mediator or something. So I think the other, if it's not apparent to the other crew members on DS9, then everyone else must be going around with their eyes closed.
I see it a little differently. I think I see it that O'Brien isn't keen on Bashir, but Bashir really wants to be friends with O'Brien.
Oh, Bashir's like a puppy. He wants to be friends with everyone.
Yeah, exactly. But that means he doesn't. I think he's so blinkered on that he doesn't see that O'Brien just doesn't want to be his friends at this, and that kind of. I think we've all been targeted by people where we're like, I'm not going to be your friend, but they just keep pushing. Like, I want to be your friend, and we've all had that. And I can kind of empathise with O'Brien on that level, but because I also, it's sort of hard to not colour where I know both these characters end up going, and because I do have a fondness for Bashir, I can sort of empathise with both of them in some ways. But yeah, I think it's a fairly realistic take on a reluctant friendship from one side. I think they do that quite well. Yeah, I liked that aspect of this episode.
I get it. I'm like, I obviously come from the same angle as PJ here in that obviously I know where, again, I've said this a few times, I know where this is all going. So I can see building blocks here and I can see obviously what will become. But yeah, it's fun because obviously Tim, he's coming in cold. So he's just like, oh, last season, couldn't stand Bashir at all. This season, really does not like O'Brien. And it's like, that's interesting. I get it. I can see it. I mean, through the conversations, yeah, O'Brien is a bit of a sourpuss at times. He is. Not even funny about it. He's just like, dude, cheer the up, man.
Yeah.
I'd prefer there to be a bit more variety in his demeanour. He's grumpy most of the time, and when he's in lighter moments, he doesn't lighten up very much. He's still reasonably grumpy, and you only have to look at the way that he is with his wife on screen to see that there's no sort of physical chemistry there, but he doesn't really have that with anyone. So I suppose in that respect, then potentially there's a consistency there to him, I guess.
Okay.
I'm not warming to him, that's all.
All right, PJ, another question for you, because anybody who's watched and listened to us go on about Brian a lot, because he does tend to be a focus of episodes way too often. What do you think of the O'Brien relationship? Do you buy it? Because again, you saw it in the beginning. Well, we didn't see it in the beginning, obviously.
No, her first appearance was their wedding, wasn't it? So...
I've said this before. It's like you could have done a few episodes leading in, and I also wonder. And I don't know if you ever thought about this, but to me, if you're going to have a character who is at this point in Next Gen was a semi-regular, was almost a regular character at that point. And you're going to have a character to come in to play his wife. Wouldn't you have done some sort of casting for chemistry or something before? It does seem to me that they didn't do that. They could just here she is. This is the character actress we picked. Good luck.
I don't know if they were thinking that far ahead when they cast her, though. Because obviously O'Brien was becoming a semi-regular on Next Generation. I can't remember if it's season 4 or 5, their wedding episode.
5.
So they knew Deep Space.
4.
Right. Okay.
5 is the birth of Molly, who is only 2.5 years old, even though she appeared to be about 6.
Yeah. Yeah.
Weird.
So
different in space years.
Apparently, Klingons I get, but human babies, come on.
What I find weirder, though, is obviously O'Brien's a fairly minor character at that point in Next Generation, so fine, they could have been having this whole thing off screen, but Data's giving her away.
Yeah.
Why is she friends with Data? Anyway, that's another podcast.
Did we ever find out why?
I don't think so. Not that I remember.
No, he just introduced them together, didn't he?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of agree that their relationship is never played warmly, let's say, in Deep Space Nine. I don't think it's either actor's fault. I know Rosalind Chow has had a lot of hate online from people for it, but as you say, I don't think they ever did any kind of chemistry read, and it was just sort of they were put together and they both have to make the best of it. And I don't know now if I'm talking about the actors or the characters, but
both.
I don't.
Maybe Data forced them together.
Well, yeah, it's an experiment. Yeah,
I can totally see that.
But when you say to me, "What do you think about the relationship?" the honest answer is, I don't. I don't think I have any feelings about the O'Brien relationship either way. It's just a thing that happened.
Which says a lot, doesn't it? That it's just a non-event. It's just there. But
And
there was one
I
thing
don't.
they mentioned in this episode I thought interesting. When O'Brien and Bashir are talking, and of course O'Brien's, you know, well, Bashir's basically saying to him, like, you know, people can see that things aren't great with you two, and O'Brien admits that she didn't really want to come to DS9, but still, he made her. And when they said that, I thought, you know what? Whether they mean it or not, that explains everything about their relationship. That she is very clear. I mean, they sort of touched it earlier in episodes. The idea that she's got no place here. You know, she had the school.
Yeah.
Technically, she still has a school because apparently she's still teaching them. So I don't know where she's at. Maybe in a cargo bay. But she clearly doesn't want to be there still. And I was thinking that to me seems fairly real because, you know, I've been in the past where I've moved to another place because of my partner had this big job, and it sucks because you need to find your own spot, and if you don't, then you get resentful. So I wonder if that's an undercurrent. I don't know if intentional, but I don't know. Maybe it is intentional.
I think it's something that they probably should have dealt with, and that they didn't know how to, and probably also from what you said earlier, they had no desire to. So it's they just kind of ignore the whole relationship, and apart from the odd episode where it's featured, and it probably would have done Keiko's character and done Rosalind Chow a lot more justice if it was something that they featured more regularly and tried to develop, because you've got it's actually a really interesting narrative angle to look at someone who doesn't want to be there, and you know, because everyone else is, you know, is apparently they're sort of just like doing the best they can, making the best of it that they can because they're wanting to help others, and it's all, you know, it's all wonderful trying to help the Bajorans and everything, and get the station running effectively and stuff, and to have someone that doesn't want to be there, and to look at the sacrifices that they make, or the mental processes that they go through to keep them there, I think is. I suspect it was they probably looked at that and thought, "Whoa, this is too much. This is too big. We can't.
Is it too big?
We can't. We can't go down that route. We need to focus on people being we need to focus on your sort of challenge of the week sort of thing, and everything else. Let's not have someone bringing it all down."
I do wonder, would it be that much? Would it be that hard to fix this? Because I can think of a lot of very easy fixes for this. Literally pair up with other characters. Because whenever you see her, you know, it's only as O'Brien's wife.
Yeah, exactly.
Even when she's doing the teaching stuff, which, I mean, at least that gave us something, but it still went back to her being O'Brien's wife. You know, there's no agency for her.
No,
but yeah,
she
easy
exists
fix.
only as O'Brien's wife.
They could just pair off.
Yeah, so much so that, like what we said earlier, they refer to her as Mrs. O'Brien in several times in this episode. It's you're not allowing her to have any kind of existence outside of that marriage. So she exists purely as O'Brien's wife.
I mean, you've seen a bit of this yourself, Tim, and obviously PJ's seen this later. Whenever Rosalind Chow is given stuff to do as Keiko that's not O'Brien's wife, she's actually really good. Like this whole stuff with Vedequin, and she's great in that. There's stuff coming
There's an episode late in Deep Space Nine. I won't spoil, but she gets something quite different to do, and is quite a big part of an episode. And she is clearly having an absolute ball as she's
I'm
doing it.
assuming you're referring to that one that a lot of it happens on the promenade at the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's probably a lot more capable than the part allows her to be, and I think that's a shame, and I think the blame for it has to solely rest with the showrunners, because I think it's a situation that they don't want to face, so they just brush it away, and occasionally occasionally refer to it. But
you'd be very glad to know.
It's done so infrequently that it then when they do show it, it draws attention to the fact that it's not that you don't see it very often, and so it doesn't work, and that just makes the problem even worse.
You will therefore be very glad to know there are quite a few more episodes about the O'Briens coming up. So, yay!
Well, yeah.
Do they do anything interesting? Well, I guess we're going to see, but based on what me and PJ are saying, clearly not.
No, exactly. So, yeah.
Which is a shame. They do try one episode, I can't remember when, it's a little while later. It's a Molly episode.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I think I know where you're going.
And, it's that episode, right, where, again, trying not to give things away, but they just handle it in such a ham-fisted way that you're like, it could be so good if done well. And the resolution is just like such a reset that you're like, honestly, you should have carried on with the premise you set up here, because that would have made things much more interesting straight away, because it would have changed the dynamic in such a huge way. But of course, by the time we get to the episode, you'll have forgotten about this, so it'll be new to you.
Probably.
It's a wee while away yet. But I find it interesting. Again, I know we've said this before. Whenever we watch an episode that happens to feature O'Brien or the O'Briens in a fairly large-ish role, or even sometimes just two scenes, frankly, our discussion becomes much more about them than the actual episode. It's a bone of contention, clearly.
Yeah.
Which
there was something else about this episode as well. Towards the end, when you've got the situation with them in the runabout, and then you've got whoever the Talani, whatever it was,
Talani,
the Vlahergs and the Gugugvunts together on the other ship, and suddenly there was almost a bit of a sizzle to the episode, because you're like, ooh, it's gone a bit Star Trek suddenly, because you've got people talking to each other from ships, and there's a bit of manoeuvring around in space kind of thing, and it's sort of highlighted to me immediately what it's not what's missing from this, because obviously it's a different show, but it just felt like kind of old Star Trek to me, for a brief moment, thinking this is good when they, if they get to actually get them out in a ship, and I know that further down the line, because of the just basic stuff I do know, is that they've got it's the Defiant, isn't it, that they go off in?
I do still hate that you watched Trial and Tribulations before, because
I watched it so long ago.
So much stuff that
I don't remember much about it at all. I just imagine there's other
just
stuff.
Imagine you've not known about that ship when it arrives. You'd be like, "Whoa!" But yeah,
fair enough. But
you might go well, because you may not see it coming when it comes.
Yeah, I probably would. I haven't seen that episode for years, so
that's okay.
But it just, I just thought that it was just quite cool at the end, just to have that kind of sort of standoff. It felt a bit sort of like Kirk Star Trek.
That's fair
to me. So
sequence. There's one element of that sequence that I do really like, which I think sort of shows you the mindset of the Talani and the other guys whose names are like Kellerans, something like that, which is when they're firing on the runabout and the hairmen and women of those ships. where Cisco says, "If you fire again, you're declaring war on the Federation," and they're like, "Yeah, we're cool with that."
Yeah, that's fine. We survived one war. We can do another because
Yeah,
the War of the Federation goes so well.
yeah. Yeah, I just quite like that sort of slight, almost window that into their mindset that no, we have to get these things. We have to do this. Any means necessary.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, look, we're nearing the end, so obviously Tim's got to do baked potato time soon. Isn't that a song?
I need a wee first.
A wee baked potato.
No, just a wee.
Just a wee. Just a wee.
Too much excitement. It's been a thrilling afternoon.
Well, I understand that. This happens. Yeah. So, let's bottom line this then. Patrick, as our resident guest of the moment, what's your bottom line on this one then?
Bottom line is good, not great episode of Deep Space Nine. You know, it's always just that coffee moment for me. Miles never drinks coffee in the afternoons.
It's great that she literally, that's the clue that she jumps on and it turns out to be actually completely wrong. And it's like,
I don't know if that just undermines the whole episode in a way, though, but...
It undermines the episode, it undermines their marriage, it undermines everything, because it's a punchline.
Yeah.
It's a punchline it's a comedy punchline in a not comedy show.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Tim?
Me, too much hair, too distracting.
Read else to soon.
Comedy punchline at the end. All it needed after that really was just snapshots of everyone laughing. All the crew turning around and going,
"Don't drink coffee."
I'm
a team now.
Yeah. And a jaunty theme tune to finish. So yeah, I was not impressed with that episode again. Unfortunately, Series 2 better put its trousers up soon because it's all going a bit bollocks, really.
Yeah, last week was good. The alternate
last week was okay,
episode. And before that, we had a few.
3 or 4 pairs of pants before that. So,
yes. Yeah. Fortunately, we had Elliot for one of them, so that at least alleviated some of the episode.
Should I apologise for him? Or...
No. It was extremely entertaining and fun.
Yeah.
We were so tired at the end of it, I tell you. So, Tim, next week we have Whispers. What do you reckon? See, we nicked this from you guys, by the way.
I like them. I quite like them.
Making him guess.
Yeah, it's one of my favourite chocolate bars.
That's good.
It's a Whisper.
Come on, what do you reckon it could be?
Whispers.
It won't be.
Oh God. Don't know. It could be if there's like a bigger. We've had a couple of mentions of the Dominion.
Oh yes.
So far, kind of in a way that suggests that there's something bigger going on in the background potentially. So I wonder if Whispers might have something to do with laying the foundation. I do like that idea
because that sounds a lot more fun. Actually, I seem to recall Whispers is not awful.
Okay.
I quite like it.
What's your non-spoiler review, Pat?
It's not bad. Again, not great. Well, I've just skimmed through. You've got some pretty good episodes coming up, I think, in season 2.
I think we've gone through the hump now.
Well, you've got 1 or 2 questionable ones, but there is.
There's always only 1 or 2.
So Whispers, I think, is not bad. Not bad at all.
I think it's but I hate to tell you this. No, I really don't hate to tell you this, Tim. But it's an O'Brien episode. Can you credit it 2 in a row?
Wow.
They do that though, don't they? You often get 2 or 3 O'Brien episodes in a cluster.
I think it's because, again, I'm sure you know this. Part of his contract was, as in the actor, not the character, was I will commit to a series as long as I can have some time off during the year to go and do my films, because he still had a decent film career at the time.
Yeah,
maybe just do big chunks of O'Brien stuff. But they still could, because we're not at
Could
the point
spread
where
it
we're
out a bit.
quite serialized yet. We haven't
Yeah.
reached that stage yet, so they could definitely have like put, say, the alternate in between them. I can't see that would have changed the narrative flow at all.
yeah.
But it would have made sense. But then people seem to like O'Brien except for Tim. So
Indeed.
maybe next week's
Cool.
the week that
All
turns him around.
Put this up because I really do need a wee.
Okay, right. In that case, Patrick, where can we find you on the social medias? I'll put the links anyway, but just for those who don't bother.
I'm on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads at the moment. Is where you'll really find me sort of semi-active. PJ Montgomery on Blue Sky, and I believe I'm PJM82 on Threads and Instagram. So yeah, and Measure Fan Pod on all of those if you want to check out my Star Trek.
Oh, of course. And we do recommend that every time. And so, the rest of us, you can find us in the usual places. Threads, Twitter, Instagram, usual. Like, subscribe, all that malarkey. Until then, I have been Andy.
I've been Tim.
I've been PJ, probably will be again.
Hey,
Good.
until then, bye-bye, Duggan.